Hello, Internet. Thank you so much for joining us for today's event, Crafted Future, Driving Innovation. I'm Nick Bornstein, the General Manager of the Webby Awards, and I'm so excited to welcome you to today's program. This event is hosted in partnership with WP Engine, and it's part of our Crafted with Code series, now in its third season of celebrating how top brands, designers, and agencies are blending creativity and technology to create innovative, award-winning web and product experiences. Now, as we step into 2025, it feels especially fitting to begin this year with a conversation centered on innovation, what it means, where it's headed, and how it's shaping the future of web and product design. So today we'll delve into what defines web innovation in 2025, guided by leaders who are pushing boundaries across industries. And that's everything from journalism to real estate, using headless technology and beyond. And together, we'll uncover trends, we'll creative breakthroughs, and the technology that drives these experiences forward. It's a discussion designed to inspire ideas and spark meaningful insights as we look ahead. Now, alongside today's event, we're also launching a brand new set of Crafted with Code videos. They're available now on WP Engine's YouTube channel and on the WP Engine website and blog. But this collaborative showcase features a handpicked group of designers and leaders behind Webby recognized websites and experiences, some of whom you'll meet today, all of which that exemplify excellence across innovation and beyond. We'll make sure that we share those links in the chat as well now, so please take a look. Now, without further ado, I'm delighted to introduce our esteemed panelists who will help us unpack innovation in all of its forms. So please join me in welcoming Angelica Loers-Koer, who is the Creative Director and Managing Partner at DDNYC, John Patrick Pullen, the Founding Editor at Longlead, and Caleb Eubanks, the Director of Digital Experience at WP Engine. Hello, everybody. Welcome.
Hello.
I always like to start these off by just asking that each of you share a little bit about yourself, where you work, what you do, and your experiences with web storytelling. Angelica, I'd love to start with you.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you for having us. I'm Angelica. I am. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, very good. Thank you for having me, Nick. I'm Angelica Loers, and I am the Creative Director of DDNYC. We're an award-winning Manhattan-based creative agency. We specialize in design of different kinds and web storytelling. We've worked with fantastic clients such as Willowwood, New York City FC, and many others. My focus really at the agency is to create impactful, creative web experiences and change the future of the internet.
Small task, very small task. I love it. Well, thank you, Angelica, for being here. Caleb, I'd love to hear about you and your work at WP Engine.
Yeah, so my name is Caleb Eubanks. I lead digital experience here at WP Engine. I've spent the last 20 years or so building and creating human-centered digital experiences for some of the biggest brands in the world. I've worked on the agency side for clients like Nike, Dell, Novartis, and then led in-house teams here at WP Engine. So that gives me a unique perspective on not only building these experiences, but also scaling and maintaining innovative solutions. For me, web innovation is all about solving age-old business challenges in new ways, right? So whether we're helping a prospect better understand your business or a current customer onboarding your product, it's about finding those technologies, processes, or a new business model to innovate.
Great. Well, thank you, and thanks for joining us. And John Patrick, I'd love to round it out with you.
Thanks for having me today. I'm John Patrick Pullen. I'm the founding editor of Longlead. We're a newer media outlet we founded in 2021, and we're focused on finding, funding, financing, producing original, independent reporting, in-depth journalism. We do this interesting thing. We contract with these independent journalists, and we also partner with other outlets. But what we want to do is bring the tools and means to be able to create these really memorable and resonant digital experiences. Whether that's all across the media, podcasting, documentary, or multimedia websites as well, to take features journalism, the thing that used to be in the middle of the magazine, and really propel it onto the web and almost give it that movie feature feel.
Mm. I love that. I love that. Well, I think you all are part of such memorable experiences, and I'm excited to hear a little bit more about all of the work that you've done. But this whole conversation is about innovation, and I think every year we just see these rapid advancements and seeing how online experiences are crafted. And I think there's endless room for innovation, of course, but the word innovation can mean so many different things to so many different people. I'd love to hear how each of you define innovation, just to sort of set the table and maybe how it affects the work that you're doing. John Patrick, I'd love to hear from you, especially as someone who balances between obviously the journalism world, but also in sort of developing these memorable experiences. What does innovation look like for you online?
For us, it comes back to story. And the thing about the word story, really, it kind of bugs me. So you'll catch me throughout today. I'll say reporting, I'll say features, and I'll try to not say story, because when you create journalism and you document people's experiences, I don't like to reduce it to that word story. It almost trivializes some of the struggles that folks have. Having said that, though, to answer your question, innovation is all about how do we tell this story the best way? And you don't have to use the same things that you've done before. You can go and try a different tool in the toolbox and not even use it in the way that it was intended to be made. You just want to know what the actual effect is going to be. So, for us, we learn with every single feature that we develop, whether it's a podcast or a website, and we bring those learnings into future features. But having said that, it's always something new. It's next. It's pushing forward.
Totally. Angelica, what about you? How are you defining innovation?
It's a great question. I think I would say web innovation is really web communication, and it's defined quite differently for different industries. Various industries that we work with alone, from real estate to sports to media, they are in a different realm of evolution within digital, within web. And the best way to describe it is to take strides within each industry to push it forward. But you can't go too fast, or it's inappropriate and you're not communicating to your audiences. So it's very important with each industry to connect. And I would say that's the key to innovation, is to really take a sober look at each industry individually and think about how we can innovate within each.
I love that. Yeah, it's almost, while I think so much of us might think of innovation as a rapid pace or something moving really quickly, I love that idea that it's maybe a little bit more thoughtful. It's a little bit more paced around communicating with your audiences. And Caleb, what about you? How are you defining innovation in web and product design?
Yeah, I love Angelica's point as well. For me, again, it's about solving new challenges or age-old challenges in new ways, right? And whether as long as you're focused on the customer, as long as you're solving problems in better, faster, or just more efficient ways, right? Ultimately reducing strain on a customer, on an end user, trying to share your story or your information more widely, but just something that's new or unthought of before is what I define it as web innovation.
Yeah. Well, let us dig in a little bit more. I think you've all given us some great places to start in terms of thinking about the landscape. This season, as I mentioned, we're really thrilled to highlight the work of Longlead and DDNYC as outstanding examples of innovation as part of this Crafted with Code showcase with our friends at WP Engine. So a big congrats to both of you. I'd love to just learn a little bit more about your projects and hear about some of your experiences creating these digital experiences. Angelica, DDNYC was featured for the Hawkridge Luxury Real Estate Project, which is a headless custom WordPress website promoting real estate in Texas's Hill Country. It's such a visual project. My experience of it is it feels like you're immersed in this land in Texas. I'd love to hear how you approach this experience and, how you were thinking about engaging consumers in the world of real estate, as I know that's a space that you often work in alongside some other spaces.
Definitely. I think real estate is one of the industries where digital is advanced, and you really do have to take a highly innovative approach to impress, as there's so much competition out there. especially working on a project like Hawkridge, where it's really a vision of the founder. Kirby Walls stood in this land and envisioned how this land can be, right? So we're talking about dirt. We're just talking about dirt just outside of downtown Austin. How can we give the potential resident of this community, of this beautiful luxury gated community, an essence of what it would be like to live there? And to do that through digital on top. So we wanted to take a highly innovative approach, and of course, we're utilizing WP Engine's toolkit of using headless on a WordPress backend with some of the best technologies of optimizing speed. We presented essentially a story through the site. We use custom elements of illustration, custom map designs, custom 3D to create that immersive experience of living in Austin. And WP Engine, some of the team is in Austin, and I know they drive through Dripping Springs and see the Hawkridge development, and they echo that we've done the job that community really deserved, we believe.
Wow. And was it sort of new for the client, sort of the approach that you took? Did that feel like a risk for them or innovation to them in the way that you were approaching it? Or was that sort of how they conceived the project at the start?
Different clients have different approach to projects and different, I would say, different capability for innovation and that immersive communication. With Kirby Walls, and his team, we really felt that we were such a great match because they wanted to find an agency that was going to communicate their vision as well as we were able to do. And so there was quite a great connection in that sense. So the client in this case was, wonderful to work with, to be able to really match his vision with our digital expertise and capability.
Great. Well, congratulations again. It's a beautiful experience. And again, please check out this work. It is on the Craft with Code showcase. You can hear Angelica talk a little bit more about it with her team. And John Patrick, I'd love to move over to your project. I was really excited to have your voice on this panel today, as you're an acclaimed journalist who has also embraced web experiences as a new way to tell stories. Lifting Ukraine, which is the project that you did with Longlead that was recognized at the Webby Awards, is so special. And it tells, I think, this really beautiful story in such an innovative and really immersive way. I'd love to hear a little bit more about your inspiration and process for creating the experience.
Well, the inspiration always comes from the pitch. So Marini Staub, journalist, photojournalist, she sent in this idea of, about Anna Kirkarina, a world champion weightlifter who's rescuing animals on the streets of southern Ukraine. And, it's just stunning what she's doing in a time of incredible, tragedy and horror. And you don't necessarily think of, what about the pets, right? But, so there is that element of telling a very human story during wartime in an area of the world that, is getting covered, but maybe not covered in this very human way, and telling a human story as it applies to animals. But also, if we're being strategic, the internet likes cats. So, we thought, well, if we have pictures of cats, we'll do well. But that's not the point. I mean, the point for us is, as Longlead, if I can take a step back, what we do, and I kind of outlined this before, is we provide all these tools and frameworks. When the pitch comes in, we look at whatever the idea is, and we say, what does this story, again, I shudder, want to be, right? So you'll get pitches from journalists who maybe are really good at profiles, and you'll say, well, this isn't a profile. It's actually probably a trend piece. So we work with the journalists to not only make that what it wants to be, but allow them to put their skills into it and make it what they want it to be. For this was straight away a photo essay, but we hadn't done any photo essays before. So that was a challenge for us. And we knew that we had to develop a whole new way of presenting information that we didn't have previously. That's not new to us. all of our features are built from the ground up. So we start from scratch. And then what I say to journalists is, we take your idea and we put it there, and then we build the frameworks around it to support your story. And that's why no two long lead features look the same or behave the same, because they aren't the same. They're all multi-site. They're not all multi-site headless, but most of them are. And through that, we have a really good backend that we can enter the data into, enter the reporting into, and work it with it, in a way that we're comfortable. But then on the front end, use really great things like transition effects and scaling and all of that to tell the story in the way that the reader needs to visualize it and draw the focus where it needs to go.
Well, and I'm just amazed as someone who is not necessarily, I know, you don't come from a technical design background. You have been able to approach this work with such thought. How have you approached this as a non-technical designer to sort of approach storytelling, maybe learning the technology and sort of creating the framework of what you want and making it come alive on the screen?
Right. It's a great question. I mean, credit for lifting Ukraine really goes to Decimal Studios, our design partner on this and several other projects. I ask a lot of stupid questions. I say a lot of uninformed things, and then ask, how do we make this a reality? And a lot of the times the answer is it can't be done. I'm very surprised by how often it can be done. And then it's a matter of timing, resources, and all of that. But it's a challenge and it's fun. We get to do something different every single time. Who wants to go to work and do the same thing every day? No one wants to do that. So it's something that we can do as journalists, but also the reporting deserves that, right? You wouldn't want to see this exact treatment on another story. It just wouldn't work.
Totally. Well, and Caleb, one thing that we spoke about earlier, which I think really ties in nicely, is this idea that the website is really the first expression of a brand. And, I think for Longlead, that is so connected. And Caleb, I'd love to hear a little bit more about sort of how you and the team at WP Engine are empowering designers and storytellers like Angelica, like John Patrick, to create work that feels innovative and sort of brand forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have a fantastic product team here at WP Engine, and what they create is amazing. Here on the marketing side, we like to drink our own champagne by using those products and tools. And then we're lucky enough to partner with those teams to create real-time feedback loop. And this allows us both, product and marketing, to innovate together, and ultimately provides a better service to our customers, who are those designers and storytellers using those products every day.
Well, and we've talked a lot about headless. I think that will probably continue, as I know both projects worked closely in the space. But I think headless is also so connected to personalization, and it allows teams to pick and choose the right technologies and doesn't overwhelm people by just throwing all the tools at them. I'm curious, Caleb, I mean, do you feel like what are the opportunities that headless technology can offer more flexibility and also help to grow this idea of personalization? And said another way, why is personalization so important in terms of innovation?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of benefits to a headless platform, right? Excuse me. At a base level, headless technology allows greater flexibility across your entire ecosystem and is inherently modular and flexible. The separation of the front end and the back end allows you to choose the front end framework that works for you, right? And it goes back to John Patrick's point about not every project is the same. In the second is really that omni-channel delivery. Headless allows content and experiences to be delivered across multiple channels, whether that's the web, native applications, or even secondary devices like Internet of Things. And with that content being managed in a single place, it can be delivered across all the appropriate channels and modeled to the appropriate audience and workflow. For us, it's about delivering it in those localized experiences in context-aware situations where we're tailoring the UX for the device type, location, et cetera.
And how have you? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, go ahead.
No, I was just going to dig in. I wanted to hear a little bit more about your thoughts just on personalization at large and the importance of it.
First and foremost, personalization is incredibly important, right? Like, I mean, frankly, now it's table stakes in a modern digital economy. Personalization is a matrix. So the more you know, the greater your technology stack is connected, the more you can personalize, right? So for me, personalization is all about the data that is available to you to personalize. And what's so interesting about the advancement of AI is all the models are consuming data and experimenting with different outputs. They can hone in on true success signals and in turn become smarter and smarter. And as it relates to converting buyers along that customer journey or finding that next best action. So things like lead scoring or purchase path improvements, basically anywhere across the customer journey can be personalized and fueled by AI at scale.
Thank you. Yeah, it's fascinating. You know, Angelica, you mentioned as well that you used Headless to build Hawk Ridge, especially with like using custom 3D elements and renderings, interactive maps. Can you tell us a little bit more about the benefits you saw from using Headless to sort of create these 3D elements and sort of the thinking behind it?
Absolutely. Headless architecture really gives us that flexibility across each and every project. And beyond Hawk Ridge, we utilize Headless in most of the projects that we do at DDNYC. As John put very eloquently, not every feature is the same. Every single feature they do is taken a completely unique approach, and the same goes with the websites we built. I almost wanted to just echo that directly after. We look at each project with a lens of design. We look at of where is that industry in terms of the evolution of innovation? How will the communication work to their audiences? What will help them convert? Because we look at projects beyond just what the output will be, but we're looking beyond into the ROI. What is going to be the return on the investment they make with that new site? And our agency utilizes Headless to be able to create any design possible, essentially, by disconnecting, as Caleb said, front end from back end, and having that modular system in place to be able to then further scale that highly custom environment.
Well, and I would love to hear how you feel this changes depending on the brand or business or industry that you're working in. You know, you and DDNYC focus on everything from real estate to sports to beauty to architecture. Obviously, this is a real estate project in the Crafted with Code program. But in your opinion, do you feel like businesses approach this type of innovation and maybe immersive or interactive elements differently depending on sort of their needs or their industry?
Absolutely. I mean, it's a balance. It's a balance of innovation versus something highly familiar. You need to think about usability in each every industry, how it's going to be perceived. As I mentioned earlier, there's a different propensity to also innovate client by client. So it's important to really balance all the toolkit that we have to create an environment that will be familiar, usable, and ultimately convert for that industry and that client.
Mm-hmm. And John Patrick, on your side for journalism and editorial, has that been sort of a barrier with any of your audience and sort of training them on a new experience to journalism, to editorial? You know, if you go to Long Lead, it's such an immersive and beautiful experience, which feels quite different than a lot of other editorial and journalism outlets. I'm curious what feedback you've been getting and how the audience has been reacting.
John, you're on mute.
Oh yes, I didn't. I was afraid it was me this time, but yeah.
No, sorry. Thanks for telling me. Yeah, no, on the internet, you know, people have thoughts, and they are not afraid to share them, especially with journalists. And they're not always the best thoughts. But you know what it is that we're trying to do is push the industry forward. There's better ways to present information. And that's what we're, you know, endeavoring to show. So there are times, and Angelica, you made this point earlier, and I loved it. You know, sometimes you're leading them a little too fast, and people don't get it. We've been there with some of our features before, and it's okay, because one of the things that we're very cognizant about when we're selecting topics for our features will these have staying power? You know. Our first feature was about the world's deepest freediver, and how she overcame childhood trauma. That's kind of universal. You could read that today. You could read it when it came out in 2021. It still works. But it's the design that has to stay. And so if you went to that piece today, would you think that it was forward leaning, or would it feel natural? And we felt that one felt really natural. So I think I think it's our job to push, but in a way to present information. Now, one quick note. We work in long form, but this was supposed to be a photo. Well, this is a photo essay, Lifting Ukraine. I think it would surprise most of you to know, who have gone through it. It's 7,500 words. You don't feel that because it's so rich in its visuals. But it's a long story. We wanted to make it shorter, but it's pretty amazing.
Well, I think that's a testament to you and the team and the work that you did, because it feels almost cinematic. It takes you through the story, whether it's video or photos, and it sort of leads you down the path in a really engaging way. So congrats. Although I imagine, telling a story over that many words can be hard to grab attention. I think it reminds me a little bit of Caleb, talking about the beauty of innovation to solve problems. And, Caleb, I'd love to hear, not necessarily about problems that you're seeing, but sort of how innovation can help solve challenges, maybe what those challenges you've seen just in the industry, and sort of how you've thought about potential solves.
Oh, that's interesting. I mean, the challenges that I see are it's all about speed and performance, right? It's in delivering value back to the customers, value back to your readers, to your users, ultimately, right? And so, how can you use a story and develop that experience so that your customers, your end users, ultimately see the value that you're trying to convey, whether that's a story, whether that's, you're trying to sell some real estate or sell a product online. The challenge is trying to know your audience and then converting that audience into the pathway down the user journey that you want to take them.
Mm-hmm. This is, I guess, Caleb, I also am curious, Angelica, for your thoughts too, but I think there's a lot of value in creating really beautiful experiences, but we're also seeing a lot of beautiful and minimal experiences, sort of this idea that maybe it doesn't need to be super complicated in order to feel really functional and really engaging. Do you, either of you, maybe Angelica, we can start with you, but do you feel like brands and partners can approach innovation with minimalistic tendencies, or do you feel like innovation is connected to something simpler or more subtler, or does it range?
It's a great question. I think it really, again, depends on the project. It depends on the client's needs and the industry they are in. I would say that minimalism is one of the trends we do employ quite often at DDNYC. With every project we approach, we decide which trends we're going to employ. And the reason we do that is because we want it to be innovative at launch, but also have longevity. We've built websites, I would say almost 9 years ago now. We're coming up on 10 years in March. 9 years ago that are still referenced today in client briefs, because they think this is something that we just built last year. And that's fantastic. And that's really a in course of the fact that we use trends at the time when they were appropriate to create that longevity, to impress at launch and create longevity. That's really the key, I would say, in terms of balancing the various toolkits. And minimalism is one of them.
Yeah. Longevity, it's such an interesting, I'm really glad you brought that up, because I feel like that's an important part of this, especially if we are considering that they're the entry point for a brand. You want it to have legacy. You want it to have a point of view. I do wonder, Caleb, what are your thoughts on sort of minimalism versus, extravagance in terms of innovation?
For me, it's about an emotion, right? Like, depending on what your audience is, who you're trying to reach, and what emotion you're trying to convey, right? If you want to convey elegance, or then minimalism is absolutely an appropriate pathway to go. If you want to kind of create chaos and confusion, you're trying to create that emotion, then maybe you want to go a little bit more. So I think there's a little bit of a balance. I think we have to, a lot of websites look a lot of the same ways, and so you have to be innovative and exploratory to create new experiences, and sometimes you're pulling in from different pieces here and there. So I generally appreciate more minimalist style, but that's a personal preference. But absolutely, just solve the problem for the client or the audience or the tool you're trying to reach today.
I love it. Well, we're talking a lot about the future, and I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you all for some predictions and sort of where we're going in terms of innovation. John Patrick, you really are leading the charge in sort of, I think, web experiences for journalism and storytelling, nonfiction storytelling. Are you seeing other people join you in terms of seeing photojournalism and interactive journalism in this way in terms of web experiences? Or do you feel like there's another frontier in sort of how to express these stories online?
I mean, yeah, there are definitely other outlets that are doing what we're doing, but and I don't want to come across a certain way, but also no one's doing it the way that we're doing it as well. You have especially some of the well-funded legacy media outlets that are blowing the doors off on really big features, and New York Times, leads the way in that. I mean, their feature Snowfall, and if you're watching this and you're not familiar with it, go back to that. It was put out, maybe 10 years ago, but it just changed the way that we represent features in journalism. But on the other hand, most media outlets, they have their templates and they pour copy into it. And what that does is really, it lessens the reporting, because all reporting is not made to fit into this box. So I love that there's more competition in this space, when it comes to Webby Awards or anything else. And we're going to continue to push further and further and further and see how to do it differently. But at the same time, I want to see the ground come up. I want to see, everyone be able to access this. So that's why one of the things that we do is, we're partnering with other organizations, and if they've got a wonderful feature idea, let's work together to co-publish it. We just had a podcast where we partnered with The Trace, and it's on gun violence. That's not a website, but The Trace has, such incredible team and presence in this space that they were able to really get out through the web and through their presence, the message about this podcast and what we covered. So features can take all sorts of shapes. But when it comes to these web features, these interactive multimedias, we have a ways to go as the industry.
Well, I think you guys are doing beautiful work. We don't need to talk about the competition, but congrats to the work that you're doing. Angelica, what about you? What are you looking forward to in terms of innovation this year, and in terms of also the work that you're doing?
Definitely. I thought about that as we were discussing this earlier, and I think, of course, I have to say, embracing AI, and it's happening already. And when I say embracing, I don't mean in terms of utilizing it more. I think that's already happened. But in previous years, we've seen it sort of be like a bad word in some cases, as if it's a cheat, as if it's plagiarism. I don't believe it is so. It's a good ideational tool. It's just like when we had the printing press creation, and it's just another iteration of what we're working on. So I think embracing that into everything that we do is something I really do look forward to. Personalization, something you brought up, is another really strong point. I think seeing dynamic pages created for each and every audience type, I think that's really fantastic. And more technically, and this is something Caleb and I can talk about at length, is I actually think compression is going to be an important factor. The audience's expectations today is for such high quality video, audio, imagery, to store and to display such high quality visuals. We're going to really need to look at better innovation in the compression space to be able to both store all the data that we have accumulated over the past several decades now, and ultimately display it through these lightweight websites that we build at agencies like ours.
Well, yes, we haven't even talked about AI or compression, so that's feels like that's a whole other chat that I'd love to have with you. But Caleb, curious for your response, thoughts to that. In addition to curious for your thoughts on that, and then I have another one I want to ask you as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I love that she brought that up. I mean, video is huge and quality video, and you have to do that. But at the same time, we're looking at different devices and different connections, and so you have to be able to compress and still deliver and store all that data. I believe we, as a whole in the universe or in the world, we double our data that we create every 2 years or something like that. So at scale, so absolutely, it's a fantastic piece to, and I think the AI is absolutely a huge component of that. But that's just a tool to move faster.
Yeah. Well, and I want to ask you one other question. However, I also want to just offer to everyone joining in today, please, if you have any questions for our panelists, we'd absolutely love to hear from you. And we'll save a little bit of time at the end to ask some of your questions. So put them in the chat and we will make sure that we get to them as well. I definitely want to save time for the community that has questions here. But Caleb, just in terms of maybe your predictions for how agencies, brands, maybe even other publishers should be thinking about an innovation, like what are the tools, what should people be really thinking about in terms of future-proofing sort of their design, their products, et cetera?
Yeah. I mean, I think we started touching on it here a little bit, but for me, it's data and speed, right? More data, which in turn is going to lead to more AI and more machine learning. But the reality is AI and machine learning are just tools that speed up the processing of that data, which you can leverage, right? Data is the important piece. So it's about using that data for rapid experimentation, to get to better outcomes faster, right? So on the marketing side, like how can you leverage tools to personalize an experience faster, to encourage a user to buy sooner, right? On a customer support side, what data can you give them sooner, so that way they don't have to look around and create, they're then unhappy or dissatisfied because it took them long to find their answer. Get them their answer as fast as possible, solve their problem as fast as possible, and to do that, you need more data, right? And so it's about that rapid experimentation.
I love it. Well, I guess just final question maybe for Angelica and John Patrick, are there certain ways that you both are challenging yourselves in terms of innovation and evolution? You both work on really diverse, really exciting work. And I'm just curious, what is your, I guess, 2025 New Year's resolution for driving innovation look like in terms of your work in the web? Angelica, we can start with you.
All right. Well, I think my team can attest to the fact that I challenge them each and every day. But yes, I mean, I think we want to improve the experience of as many customers of our clients as possible. Get them to both immerse in in what our client is doing, but as well as convert and help them convert faster. I think we talked a bit about e-commerce outside of this panel, Nick. And for instance, all the ways that we can improve someone's experience, both on the education side, which is using these immersive web experiences, but also automations and all down to the granularity of the experience is really where you have to always ask the 5 whys and ask, how can we do it better, faster, and stronger?
Can I ask you a maybe silly question? What are the 5 whys? Oh, who, what, where, when, why?
Well, no, the 5 whys go like this. So you have to always, every time you approach a problem, you have to ask the 5 whys. It's just why. You ask, why is the problem happening? You get an answer. Then when this answer comes forward, you ask again why. And then when you get to the very core of the problem, that's the fifth why is usually going to get you that answer. And this is how we challenge problems at DDNYC. We'll go to the root cause, not just trying to superficially fix the issue, but rather go to the very core of the issue and improve the experience throughout and improve process as a whole.
I love it. I'm learning so much today. The 5 whys, John Patrick, the idea that cats always work on the internet. I agree. That is something we often see at the Webby Awards. And John Patrick, just, rounding it out, curious, what are you doing to challenge yourself and sort of consider innovation this year?
Yeah, well, first I'm going to shout out to Angelica for her 5 whys. I mean, I'm of the old school journalism 5 whys. But, it does seem like every single day as a journalist, we're all saying, dear God, why is this happening? And, and I think that's a bit of the answer too. How are we going to push innovation this year? This is a hugely important time for journalism. I mean, it is. It doesn't matter, what your thoughts or feelings are in the state of the world. We need to continue to hold power to account, no matter where they are and what they do, and by presenting those stories in compelling ways, using every single tool in the toolbox. That's what we're going to do at Longlead, and so I can't tell you exactly how we're going to innovate or how we're going to push to innovate, because we don't know what it is until the story lands on our lap. But we have a few features in production for this year. And what I will say is this, when we first started lifting Ukraine, we actually were not building a photo essay. The secret is we built a photo platform. And our creative director, Sarah Rogers, was really thoughtful and measured about how we worked with Decimal and developed this site. And so from there, we've taken this exact framework, which I always, said in the beginning, we build a framework around the story. We've already built another feature. It's our Haiti story. If you go to haiti.longlead.com, you'll see it. Look at that story versus this story. It's the same back end and front end, couple of minor tweaks. But you would never know it. And so from here, we're going to take this photo platform, and the Haiti story is not a photo story, but it is photo heavy. All of our work is photo heavy. We have 2 more features in the works, and one is they are photo features, and one is partnering with, and I can't say who, but it's one of the biggest photo forces in the world. So we're just absolutely thrilled about that and seeing where we're going with this specific build next.
Well, it's really amazing the work that all of you do. Thank you so much to each of you for joining us today and being a part of this conversation. There's a couple of questions that I'd love to sort of field from the audience today. I think this one, Caleb, is really inspired by, I think, your conversation around emotion and sort of capturing that emotion. And so someone asked, when crafting an experience for your audience, how do you build it in a way that ensures the emotion you're creating is received as intended? So curious for your thoughts on that.
Interesting. I think it's knowing your audience, knowing your your who you're reaching to, and at the same time working through different options, right? And pressure testing that, whether you're testing it with an experimentation tool or you're testing it just with colleagues and others that know, as you're crafting messages and imagery, et cetera, you want to make sure that emotion delivers what you want. So absolutely, that's the way I think of it.
I'd actually love to get Angelica and John Patrick's thoughts on that. How are you ensuring the emotion you're capturing is communicated correctly, especially without misinterpretation? John Patrick, I'll start with you.
I'll jump first. Yeah. Longlead, we think of our features as 3-legged stools mostly, so you've got editorial, you've got art, and you've got design. And all 3 of those have to be at 100%. Otherwise you've got a wobbly stool and it's not working for anyone. So it's really just that traditional value of, is this art emoting in the way that it needs to accurately represent the editorial? Is the editorial polished, on par? Are these the right words? But then the design end of it too, that's key. And when it comes to web design and web development, again, we have all of these wonderful tools, especially through headless, right? That you can communicate through, even through a transition, even through a layering effect, right? So why aren't we using this as an industry? Well, I ask that here because it's kind of communication space, but we don't ask that at Longlead. We just do it.
Mm-hmm. Don't ask for permission. I love it.
I'll be a bit more blunt, Nick. Session duration. I mean, if you're evoking an emotion, the audience member is going to stay longer on your website. We can measure that. We can see in the analytics, and we can really measure the improvements as such. Also, of course, conversion. Different clients have different objectives, and if the objective is to have a specific type of conversion on the site, then that is going to means that we connected. That means the emotion was evoked that we were looking for from that client. Speaking of Hawkridge, of course, is going to be visiting this land, visiting these lots, and becoming residents of this community. And every client is different, and every project is different. Sometimes it is awareness, sometimes it is something very specific, like a sale. So measuring such and creating the correct emotions that will lead to the goal of each and every client.
Yeah.
What's really fascinating to me about emotions in this concept is really the concept of, it's far out right now, but the concept of emotion-based personalization, right? So personalizing based on the emotions of the end user, right? So at an early stage, you can think about using sentiment or tone and tenor of a conversation to improve like a customer support queue, right? That seems pretty straightforward. But later stages, even leveraging those emotions to as a buying signal, right? When somebody gets excited, like they're ready to buy, and the tools and technologies aren't there yet to capture that. But that's certainly interesting. That concept of building on that emotion.
Yeah. That is super interesting. I actually think, imagine the internet where you're not just being personalized based on your LinkedIn profile, what industry you work in, and how big that company is, but in being personalized further on what mood are you in? Because we're not just different people, but we're also different each and every day, right?
That's exactly right.
That is something that is really the future of internet. And I don't think it's very close, but it will happen eventually.
For sure.
Well, it reminds me too of Caleb, you started our conversation by talking about sort of human-centered experiences, like really thinking about the humanness and the humanity of internet experiences. I am curious, and I'd love to hear maybe how all of you are working or not working with AI. But Caleb, I know that there's been a lot of thinking sort of on the WP Engine side. I'd love to hear maybe how AI is coming into the work that you're doing, and maybe some tools that people can think about.
Yeah, we're leveraging AI specifically on the support side. We're trying to get answers faster to a user, right? Sometimes and getting those answers at all times of the day, right? And so even when support teams are around or they are not, so that is absolutely an area where we can improve support queues, get an answer, and really it's not just a Google search on how do I solve this particular problem, but users ask it in unique ways, in different ways, and it's about crafting that answer towards them. And so, generative AI helps us in a lot of ways with that, and it's reduced call volume and really helped us out there. But it's something we're using, and there's a lot more opportunities for us to use it, and we have to explore that. The challenge is you also have to be careful and cognizant of the data it's consuming and the answers that it puts out. But that's across all uses, and so that's table stakes there. But it is a fantastic tool that we're using.
And Angelica, I know you touched on it a little bit earlier, but can you give us a little preview into sort of how you're thinking about AI in terms of the work that you're doing?
Okay, can't disclose the exact client that we're working with, but it's a large client, and we are In one of the discovery calls with the core stakeholder group, we came to a conclusion that it would be quite interesting to not even have a website anymore, to just have a chatbot window that's going to give you all the information that you're looking for through it. That was, of course, a not very pragmatic way of going about it when you're still in an SEO-friendly world of pages and indexation on the internet. So we're not going to go that route quite yet, but I think that is the future, right? I believe that maybe at first we will start with chatbots that are not, and historically chatbots have been annoying, I believe, to most of the audience listening to us here, but in today's world where AI is so advanced, it can really get intrinsically educated on the knowledge of that site alone and give you the answers on specific questions, specific information you're looking for, and that really does expedite the experience and expedite what the audience member is going to be looking for. Mm-hmm. So that's the ways we're looking at the future of the website building it with integration of AI.
Mm-hmm. John Patrick, are you exploring AI at all in your web experiences?
The emoji that would represent this answer to this would be the grimacing face. We have feelings about AI in journalism. I mean, but also in what we're doing at Longlead. I'm going to confess, publicly, I used AI recently in our research, and then I'm going to tell you that like the way in which we did it, I was fine with it because we're going to be backstopped by fact checkers. Mm-hmm. And fact checkers is a hot topic right now in the world, but it's always been a hot topic for long form journalism. I mean, this is the kind of work that needs to be done to make sure that you're not going to get sued, that you're doing the right things, and they're unheralded. So it's funny that I think tomorrow we're going to put out a newsletter on our Longlead newsletter about our fact checking for the Haiti story. You can't AI that. You can't AI fact checking or pretty much anything about Haiti. The reporting on the ground is really hard. But, I was doing preliminary research for a project that we're doing that has like a 25-year span of history. And I just wanted to know what happened in between these 25 years without doing 60 Google searches. And, so it works well. And I do think that there's practical applications for it with journalism, but you always have to be cautious about it because that timeline that I pulled, if we start from there, if that's our starting point and there is a hallucination in there, then the whole thing is a fantastic dream until we get to the fact checking, and then it's a nightmare.
Yeah. One just final question this came up in the chat as well is, this is I guess a little bit for John Patrick, but Angelica, be curious for your thoughts too. I mean, how are you dealing with audience discovery and engagement? I mean, do you find that your traffic is more effective in one space than another? I know, John Patrick, for example, you have several different channels of sort of reaching your audience. Curious sort of, how you found just engaging people across different spaces.
Journalism audience engagement has been an incredible challenge since we started in 2021. I mean, it's just, and I think that the move to newsletters has been a really good move for the industry, coming back and owning your audience. But every single newsletter subscriber that we get, and please subscribe, is hard fought for and retained. Whereas the social platforms, I mean, they're fickle. I went on Facebook this morning and it took me 5 minutes before I actually saw something from someone I know. And that's Facebook, right? So the platforms are not our friends in journalism anymore. And I don't think that anyone in journalism thinks that, feels that they are. So we have to find a new way forward. That's part of what we're doing, at Longlead. We're creating these wonderful experiences that can't really be co-opted by these platforms because they can't live there. You have to go to the website. And, we have wonderful web browsers with incredible tools to present information. We just have to retrain audiences to want to do that.
Great. Well, That wraps up the program today. I wanted to thank all of you so much for joining us. A big thanks also to Caleb and WP Engine as our partners for this wonderful support. Thanks again to Angelica and John Patrick for being a part of this season and this wonderful program. Please do check out their innovation showcase and their great work as featured in our Crafted with Code series on YouTube. It is linked in the chat, so make sure you check it out. You can dig a little bit deeper into both of their works. And of course, if you are making excellent digital experiences on the internet, whether across websites, mobile apps, apps and software, etc., we would love to review your work at the Webby Awards. We are the largest and the most competitive award honoring internet excellence. And our extended entry deadline, which is the last and final opportunity to submit to the Webby Awards, is Friday, February 7th. So I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it, but we really love to review your work this year. And again, for those of you who maybe joined us in session or would like to share this with friends or colleagues, you will be able to access this video in the future on our LinkedIn page. So please, join the conversation. And until then, thank you again. And we look forward to seeing all of you on the internet.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.